Hey everybody, we are starting week 2 of the Pantry Challenge. And so in this video, we are gonna go over how week 1 went for our family, what adjustments I'm making based on how the last week went, and then we will make a meal plan for week 2. At the end of this video, we will talk about the budget and what adjustments we will be making for the next week. So that'll be at the end. I also created a playlist for the 2023 Pantry Challenge if you want to go ahead and see them all in one spot. I'll put a link for that in the description box, and then also I'll put a link for it at the end of the video. I know some of you are doing a Pantry Challenge as well, so if you want to put in the comments how things are going for you, we would love to read it. Okay, so first let's talk about how the last 7 days have gone. I'm going to be honest, week 1 seemed to be off to a very rough start, and primarily that's because when I went to the grocery store to get a few supplemental items to fill into the meal plan that we created together, in addition to just normal staple stuff that we keep around the house that I wanted to make sure that we had for the week, I completely blew the budget. And not just by a little bit, but I felt like it was kind of by a lot. And just as a reminder, I gave our family a $50 budget per week for this challenge. So when I went over so quickly, it was pretty discouraging to me. We'll talk more at the end of the video about how I'm going to address the topic of a budget for this pantry challenge. But in general, I think that it's been really eye-opening just how much groceries have gone up. Where I feel like the same amount of money a year ago, maybe even not even that long ago, would have stretched so much further. That amount of money is stretching just a lot less. So another thing that was kind of a wrench in my plan this week was we had some issues with another appliance of ours. If you watched my video last week, I talked about how our oven stopped working right before Christmas. Thankfully, we got this fixed. And so it's heating great. And I was so excited to make that granola that I actually made it yesterday. So that's already in our pantry, ready to go. But we also had issues with our fridge. And we had actually a couple things going on. And so when we fixed the first issue, we realized that it wasn't getting cold enough. And so our fridge was only getting down to like 56, 55 degrees at the coldest, which of course is not a safe temperature to be storing animal products at. So we had to replace some of those. Just felt like it was better to be a little cautious. We didn't have a lot in there, but there was that aspect as well. I felt very good about getting our stuff fixed without having to, hire somebody or anything like that. It was pretty easy to do thanks to some very helpful YouTube videos. Besides the budget being, the budget piece not going well, and getting our appliances in order, I feel like those are the most challenging parts. So what went really well this week was the meal plan that we created. I'll recap what we did for our meals in order in just a second here, but I found somebody locally to purchase eggs from, which I'm super excited about. I got them for $5 a dozen. She's going to deliver them every other week. It seems pricey. It's actually cheaper than just the conventional straight dozen eggs in the grocery store, which is kind of surprising. In fact, talk about food price going up, the prices of eggs have really gone up. So we're getting those. We'll see if we're getting 2 dozen every 2 weeks, but that doesn't seem like a lot. So maybe we'll increase that to 3. So we'll see how that goes. Another thing that I'm coming across this week is realizing where we are at in terms of the current food in our house, how quickly it might be to realistically expect us to go through it and to kind of turn over the inventory of it. Okay, so let's talk about what we did last week for our food plan. Day 1, we just did vegetable pasta, used up the rest of our can of sauce. It was pretty basic and simple. Day 2, we made the black bean soup, and we had it with naan. We had lots of naan in both freezers. So we used that up, and this black bean soup recipe has been so good. We've been having it almost once a week lately. It's been delicious. Day 3, we had roast beef tacos, so it wasn't actually the barbacoa beef that I thought it might have been. It was truly a beef roast. And so I had a little bit different flavor. I think I might have used some cloves and stuff when I made it. So it definitely had a different flavor, but it was super tasty. We ended up using half a can of black beans left over from the black bean soup, and it still wasn't quite enough of the protein that we wanted, so I grabbed a jar of our home canned lamb roast and threw that in there too, and it was plenty and it was good. Day 4, we made homemade pizza, and when I put this on my list originally, I just completely forgot that it was contingent upon an oven. And so what I actually did was I used our broiler I sort of preheated our oven with the broiler on high and got it really nice and hot in there. And then when I put the pizza in, I put one of our large baking sheets on a rack just above so that it would protect the top of the pizza from the intensity of the broiler element. So then day 5, instead of doing a vegetable soup, because we have all those frozen vegetables, I decided to do a vegetable barley soup and ended up using one of those Costco loaves of bread. Day 6, well, that's where I was going to say about those eggs. We had to dig into them because I wanted to see how they tasted. And so we actually, for day 6, instead of having, I don't remember what it was that we subbed out, but we had breakfast for dinner instead so we could taste those eggs. And then last night we had stir fry to finish out the week. So given what we have from last week and the things that we picked up from the store this week, this is kind of what I'm thinking for meals. So we have the granola made, and I do have a video where I make our granola. This is a granola we've been making for, I have to think how old our oldest child is because it was before he was born, so like 12 years. What I've noticed is that with this granola recipe, it's really good as is, just as written. It's fantastic. But if you want to make any changes, it's very customizable, and I'll link that recipe if you want to check it out. So we also have lots of eggs, and then just oats to make oatmeal with. So that's what we'll do for breakfasts. Sometimes we also have toast, so there's that as well. For lunches, we'll keep having leftovers, sandwiches, salads. I think that pretty much covers what we have planned for that. And then for snacks, we've got lots of cheese still. We've got lots of fruit. Now that our oven's working, I have a lot of frozen bananas that need to get used. And then I also have pumpkin in the pantry that I talked about last week. So I'm not sure which, but I'll probably just do one and either make a pumpkin or a banana bread or muffins or something like that at some point this week for snacks. So now that we have that in order, I'm gonna go through and look at what we've got and let's come up with a dinner plan for week 3. Okay, so just like last week, I went ahead and I pulled out a bunch of things that we're gonna be using up this week, and I'm gonna keep them sort of front and center because it's really nice to not have to go and each day go collect what I'm gonna use. So we'll go through this quick. Okay, so one of the things I wanna make this week is a chicken pot pie. It's been a while since we've made these, and last week I talked about how I wanted to use up the peas in the freezer, so this would be a great way to use that. And we've got one more quart of home canned chicken, and the broth in here is so delicious. I actually canned it in broth, so it's sort of like double broth. It's the most tasty thing ever. So I'm going to use up that can of chicken, and then the peas, carrots, and then we have everything to make. We usually make it with biscuits instead of like a double crust. So we have everything to make that. I'm going to make a lentil soup this week instead of the bean soup. And one of my secret recipes, secret tips for making a really delicious lentil soup is by using multiple different kinds of lentils. And so I actually do a 1-to-1-to-1 ratio of green lentils, French lentils, and red lentils. The red ones are a lot smaller, and so they break down a lot quicker in the cooking process. The flavor is just so much more dynamic with all 3 of them. And so I usually just mix them together. This is just some leftovers that I have. So I'm gonna mix up a bunch more and probably put it in a bigger jar and then just use that. So that's what all these bags are here for. These are things that I get through as your standard, but you can certainly buy them in any grocery store or in a bulk food section of a co-op or a grocery store. For the vegetable barley soup, I'm actually going to do beans too because I have a can of beans that I want to use up. Beans, we've got a little bit of barley left here. It's just a pearled barley. And everything else is in the fridge or freezer, except tomatoes. I'll probably grab some more tomatoes for that soup. So this week, instead of doing a spontaneous breakfast for dinner, we're going to do a planned one. And instead of eggs, it's going to be pancakes. I have a recipe for pancakes that is super hearty. They're very substantial pancakes. There's lots of whole grains, nuts, seeds, and all kinds of stuff like that in it. And I usually like to serve it topped with yogurt and then a fruit sauce. And I found this fruit sauce in our freezer. So I'll bring that upstairs and we'll have that. And then one night we'll have spaghetti. I have this spinach fettuccine that I want to use up. I brought up a quart of tomatoes, a quart of home canned tomato sauce, and then we will use some of our frozen beef for that dinner. And then I'm actually going to leave one night for leftovers. I think just based on what I know about our family and this current meal plan, there's probably going to be leftovers, and it might not necessarily be just one. It might just be sort of like a catch-all for multiple different nights. So I think that's a pretty good plan for this week. It's definitely subject to shifting and changing, but that's okay because that's how we like it. So now that we have our meal plan for week 2, let's have the budget discussion. Where I'm at with the Pantry Challenge budget is this. I don't think that our Pantry Challenge needs to have a budget. I think even just the goal of moving through pantry items and having a really good rotation is important. That in and of itself is quite a big accomplishment. Reducing the amount of money we're spending on food for the next 2 months is still a goal, but I think it'll be a byproduct of focusing on the food that we have here. I also don't want the worry of not sticking to a budget to get in the way of having fun with it and feeling like it's a success, and that we're doing a good thing with it. So with that, I'm going to move forward into week 2 with that mindset, and just see how things are going. We can always change it if I decide, you know what, I think that we should put a budget back on it, or I'm going to try to challenge myself to a budget like this for the week or something like that. We can evaluate it for month 2. I'm just going to walk forward having faith that focusing on going through our food at home is going to naturally reduce our food budget. And then I, of course, am keeping track of how much we're spending. And so I will compare that to pre-Pantry Challenge spending. And then I can actually see the dollar amount of what we're saving. So I got some comments on the week 1 sort of intro to the Pantry Challenge video that people were thinking that just focusing on bringing down sort of food inventory in their homes, or just sort of using things up might be not such a wise idea. And I think that that's a really good thing to talk about with regards to the budget topic as well. So I'll just kind of take a minute to talk about that because I said I would talk about it in this video. Now, rotating food is a really important thing. I think that part of what I'm doing is I know, and if you saw my first video where we go downstairs, you've seen those dates on those buckets. They're not as new as I would like them to be. And so there's older food that I really know I need to work through, canned food that I need to work through. I've got expired beans downstairs. If there was an expiration date on the grains, we probably are past it. And so I think that part of what I'm trying to do is work through and rotate out things that I know are past. And I want to make sure that I'm eating when they are better. With that said, I also have a brand new 50-pound bag of oats that we just dug into when I started our granola this week. So we've got those that have rotated through. Replacing the things that you are eating is also really important as well, and just sort of keeping like a rotating pantry. So one person said that they have in and out racks, which are fantastic. You don't have to manage it in the same way. You can just keep filling in the back, the older ones, and so you just keep using what you normally use. The way we do things is a little different. I'm not quite that organized. I tend to just buy things if I know we're coming low on them, but there are some things that I've purchased that we're not moving through very quickly, just like the brown rice. And so I think that definitely tells me that I bought too much brown rice when I purchased it. Or I need to make sure that I'm finding a better way to preserve it so that it's more tightly protected from light and moisture and things like that. That would break down the quality. And the other thing is this week, interestingly enough, I have seen a lot of the things that we typically buy, and we're not just talking, we bring a few things in here and there. I'm talking, we keep these things on as staples, go on sale. And so what am I going to do? Sit here in my pantry challenge and just say, well, I'm not going to spend that money because I said I wasn't going to. No, I'm going to take advantage of those sales because they're pretty substantial. So there's that piece as well. You don't want to ignore things that just don't make sense because you had this goal. It's important to reevaluate things. And that's a perfect example. So it's definitely a good idea to make sure that you are keeping a good inventory of the things that you regularly consume. And a pantry challenge, of course, does not need to involve just draining all of the stores that you've got. Part of using up a lot of the stuff that we've got here involves finding those things that are like a little thing here or a little thing there that we don't typically use, that we won't typically keep around, that need to get out. I hope your pantry challenges are going well. Please let us know in the comments how they're going, and if you've had any really sort of eye-opening, exciting things happening with the food you're cooking. So next week's video will be similar. It won't be the exact same, of course, because it'll be a new week. And so we'll recap week 2, any lessons that I've picked up in the next week, and then we'll make a plan for week 3. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we will see you soon.